Today we're going to be going over the Lenovo Thinkpad P50 laptop. This is a workstation class machine. It's designed to be very durable and very powerful. It is 1 year old. However, since it is 1 year old and the new model just came out, this one's going to be dropping in price to the point where you will save quite a bit if you decide to buy this over the new one. The new Lenovo P51 and P71 don't necessarily offer enough of a compelling feature set to pay the price premium for it, so this machine, being designed to be very durable, even though it's last year's model, may present a very good choice. So we're going to go over basic usability, durability, upgradability, and, well, you see in the thumbnail how we're going to end the stream. So let's go over the first thing that I noticed as soon as I took this out of the box. The first thing that you're going to notice as soon as you start using this is that when you move it back and forth, regardless of how fast I move the display assembly back and forth, this never moves from its original position and it never lifts off the desk. It feels like a sturdy, quality piece of build. And if we go over here to the MacBook Pro Retina of the same year, it's not exactly the same. The MacBook is about 1 pound lighter. However, when we open it, it moves off the desk, and you can hear it moving off the desk. And even if we go to move it a little bit slower, it still opens enough that I can fit my pinky under there. Not exactly the greatest feeling. However, as you can see, the Retina is considerably thinner than the Lenovo. I will give it that it is considerably thinner, and it is about 1 pound lighter. But I like my build quality, and since I care about my machine not dying from thermal stress in a few years, I also like my vents. So let's go into the ports on the Lenovo while we're at it. The first thing that you're going to notice here that is missing on all the new MacBook models is an SD card slot. I like having an SD card slot. I like being able to take a card out of a camera and plug it right in and get to work without needing a dongle, and Lenovo was nice enough to include that. The MacBook used to be the machine of choice for content creators because of these basic little conveniences that they had thought of just to make people's lives a little bit easier, and with the new machine, they decided to make it a little bit harder. Here we have an express card slot, and this here to cover it. Very few people I've ever met actually use that thing, but if you do, it's included. Now we're going to go over the charging port. What makes this charging port special is that the charging port is not directly soldered onto the motherboard. Every time you plug this in on a traditional laptop where the charging port is directly soldered to the motherboard, you are loosening, weakening, and beginning to crack the solder joints that attach the charge port to the motherboard, which means that eventually you will get to a point where you have to wiggle the charger in order for it to work, and eventually your charger won't work at all. On the ThinkPad P50, the charging port is held in place in a part of the casing that is actually designed to have a little bit of flex to it. And then the charging port attaches to the motherboard via a wire. So regardless of how much pressure you put on this charging port, and regardless of how much you're jiggling it back and forth, you're never putting direct pressure on the motherboard, which is an excellent design. Now, if we move on over here, you'll see that we have a full-sized HDMI port, which I approve of, since that means, again, no dongles. Here we have a USB-C and Thunderbolt 3 port, which will allow you to connect a plethora of high-power devices. I can even plug my quad HDMI capture card into this if I got an enclosure, if I so wanted, and I could use this machine as a desktop. However, the one downside to this port, if you're used to machines like the Dell XPS's 9500 series, is that you cannot charge the machine from it. Jason has a Dell XPS 9500, and it actually is able to charge off of a MacBook power supply. It doesn't charge as quickly as when it does when he's using his original Dell power supply, but if he's just browsing Reddit and not doing much and doesn't have the screen brightness all the way up, it works just fine. Here, even if you have the screen brightness down, you're barely using the CPU and the GPU is off and the battery is full, and you plug that charger in here, it doesn't recognize it at all. So it would be nice if Lenovo decided to take after Dell in that regard. Here we have a full-size Ethernet port, which is missing from many workstation class machines, so I'm glad that Lenovo chose to not sacrifice the port just to make the machine a little bit thinner. Very convenient. Here we have two USB 3 ports. This one will allow you to charge portable devices even when the computer is off. The one downside in the ports area of this machine is that they did decide to go with mini DisplayPort, which I am not the biggest fan of, because mini DisplayPort means having to carry around some sort of dongle like this, and I am a fan of not having to use dongles. Most of the monitors I've used have a full-size DisplayPort, not mini DisplayPort, which means that I need a dongle, and yes, they're cheap, but still, it's nice to just have a machine that doesn't need those things. And when you look at the size of this port, and you look at the size of this machine, it really does make sense that they just include a full-size one. Again, if we were talking about the Retina, yeah, there's no space on here for that type of port. I get it, but on this machine, there is more than enough space to have included a full-size display port the same way that they did on my T520, and I really hope that in newer iterations they include a full-size display port alongside Mini. We have the two USB 3 ports over here, and then we've got a headphone jack. And as you can see, the machine has really good ventilation. So we've got a heatsink here, we've got a heatsink here, and we have those two large vents. We've got vents on the side as well, and they are beefy looking vents. And we also have vents all over the bottom of the machine. There are a lot of vents in a lot of places for good cooling. And then we look at the MacBook, which is, yeah, yeah. So we got these, which are far away from the fans, and when we just get this. And you wonder why there's a dead GPU recall every other year. Next up, we're going to check out the thermal properties of the machine, both under load and idle, and compare and contrast it to the room temperature. So up top, you're going to see a little probe that I put on top of the machine. The probe is sitting in between the keyboard and the palm rest. I have set the machine over here to high performance, as you'll be able to see. So we have this set to high performance. We've got the Intel Power Gadget over here. I have Prime 95 on the left. I've got GPU test on the right. So we're going to run a Furmark stress test on this machine. We're going to have the little Intel tool up there, and we're also going to be able to check out the GPU temperature over here, and we're going to see how much, if at all, that this thing winds up throttling under load. So right now, the machine is idle, and the temperature around the palm rest area, according to this, is 30 Celsius, and it's just moving back and forth. And if we look over here, when the computer is idling, it's sitting at around 44 to 54 Celsius, depending on the core, which is about 15 to 20 degrees above the ambient room temperature. And the machine is fairly silent. So if I were to put my head right by the machine over here, with my microphone, this is an Omni, even if I put it right by the fan, there's really not much going on over there. You can't, it's a pretty quiet running machine. So now we are going to turn on all of this stuff and see how the temperature around the machine rises, if at all, from this 30 Celsius point that we have here. So I am going to run a torture test. We're going to start with small FFTs because that typically uses up more of the CPU and heats it up more than the blending, and then in a few minutes we're going to start Furmark. All right, so at this point we've been going for about 10 minutes, and we've won up about 1 Celsius in palm rest temperature. So if you're used to using machines where when you're under high load, the palm rest and the keyboard start to make your hands sweat, this machine has pretty much 1 degree of Celsius of difference, which is another part of what makes this a really luxurious feeling machine, is that while you're using it, you're not going to have your hands sweating while you're doing any type of encode. So this is only with the CPU. Now, so far, it seems like our temperature for the CPU maxes out at the hottest core around 85 Celsius. Some of the cores here are sitting as low as the mid-70s, and we've got some spikes of 87, and it looks like the package frequency sits at a steady 3.1 gigahertz when you're absolutely destroying the CPU. If you were using anything other than Prime 95, you probably could get a little bit more with Turbo Boost. Now, what I'm going to do is we're going to turn on Furmark as well and see if this has any effect on the CPU's on the CPU speed, because with the older W540, the CPU would start throttling itself heavily if you use the GPU at the same time. So I got anti-aliasing at 8x and resolution at this, just so I have enough space that I could still view something. So we're going to turn on this, and that is the donut. So it's rendering that over here, and we're going to take a look and see if that messes with our CPU temperature or our CPUs at all here. All right, so we've seen about a 3 Celsius difference in palm rest temperature after about 15 minutes of CPU and 5 of those minutes being the GPU on full force as well. The CPU has finally hit its max around 90 Celsius. That is with sharing a heatsink with the GPU. The GPU is about at 97% load there. The GPU is settled itself at 74 Celsius, which is considerably better than some laptops that that will go up to 85 or 90 degrees in the GPU. So I'm really happy that the GPU is staying under 90 here. Now the CPU is throttling itself. It's keeping itself at 2.8 gigahertz. If you try to use Prime 95 and the donut at the same time, you're only going to be getting 2.8 gigahertz out of the CPU. Okay, so I just put the temperature probe underneath the laptop over here, and as you can see, the temperature is still 33.5 Celsius, which is actually lower than it was when I had it on top of the machine, which is weird. That means that the bottom of the machine here is actually pretty cool. So the temperature probe is right around the middle of the machine. So the middle of the bottom of the laptop is not as hot as you would imagine. Now, the part that you have to be careful with here is not the bottom of the machine so much as it is the side of the machine. That's where the boiling air is going to come out of this thing. So if I put the temperature probe over here, you will see that in a minute or so, it is going to spike up considerably. Okay, so I just spent a few minutes holding the temperature probe right next to the vent of the machine, and that is where you can see all the hot air is coming out of. So we spent a few minutes here with this on that side, and as you can see, I'm holding the temperature probe right by the vent, and now it is actually quite hot and uncomfortable to the touch. It is hovering around 50 to 52.5 Celsius. So this machine is really good at keeping the heat away from the top and the bottom of the machine, but it is very good at directing some very boiling hot air out the sides of it, so you would have to avoid the very bad habit that I used to have of having my laptop sit in between my legs rather than on top of my legs. But if you use the laptop on top of your legs, it's not going to be as incredibly uncomfortable as it would be with other machines where the bottom is boiling. So this machine does a really good job of thermal management, in my opinion. I'd also like for you to hear what this sounds like at load. So this is with me a little far away from the machine. This is me when I put my microphone, which is an Omni, right by the Palmrest. This is on the left side, and this is on the right side. And I want you to hear the difference between that and when I turn off all this stuff that is killing my CPU and GPU. So when I turn off all the stuff that's killing the CPU and GPU, very soon after the fans are going to turn down. And now the fan is barely audible, and the air filter in the next room is actually louder than the fan inside the laptop. So this is a fairly quiet machine. Next, I'd like to do a bit more of a real-world test. Prime 95 that's not what we're doing with our computers. We don't buy $1,200 workstations to try to find the highest prime number, at least most of us. We do this to, encode video, encode audio, and things of that nature. So I'm going to open up a session file here and try encoding some video and see what I get and see if the throttling is the same 3.1 gigahertz or 2.8 gigahertz I was getting prior. All right, so here I am encoding a video in Vegas, and you can see that the CPU load is between 90 to 100%, and the fan is actually slightly quieter than it was with Prime 95. If I were to put my head right up to the laptop like so, and you can see here that even after a little bit of encoding, that we are at a base 3.3 gigahertz, which this is how normal people are going to use their computers. They're not going to be running Prime 95. So for any type of normal use, you should be fine here. Now, unfortunately, my version of Vegas is actually not really good at using the GPU for encoding anything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run GPU test while I'm running Vegas, just out of curiosity to see what happens when you're doing that and to see if it lowers my CPU frequency at all. And it seems like even if you do have the GPU running, you can still get 3.3 gigahertz out of the CPU just fine. Actually, let's just turn up the GPU usage over here. Let's run a more powerful stress test than the one that I just had going. So the GPU core is being used 81 to 100%, averaging around 898, 899, and my CPU is still sitting at 3.3 gigahertz, which means that as long as you're not purposely running something designed to destroy your CPU, you should be just fine getting 3.3 gigahertz out of a 2.8 gigahertz Xeon just out of the box. The next thing that we're going to go over here is the keyboard, the trackpoint, the trackpad, and the display. Now, on these machines, they have made the trackpad bigger than what it used to be in 2011 and 2012. as you can see, the trackpad is now large enough that if I'm using the track point, my palm is going to rest on the trackpad. So let's go over and see if this is really that terrible, and let's see how the palm rejection is. Now, there are a lot of people out there that like to use the trackpad, they like to use the track point, so they don't want to turn either one of them off, but that will be frustrated if the palm rejection on the trackpad is terrible. So let's go over and see if I'm able to write my name on screen while purposely having my palm touch the trackpad and move around constantly. So I'm going to try and write my name, L, and I'm purposely kind of moving my palm around here just to screw myself up. O, and let's see if it stops. It doesn't seem to stop at all. Alrighty. Yeah, my handwriting is this bad in real life too. And let's see if I can do it with this. I never use trackpads, so I suck at trackpad. But it seems like I actually wrote my name neater with the trackpad. Interesting. On Windows, the palm rejection on this is amazing. And you also get these features like the being able to do this with 3 fingers at the time. So you can do 3 fingers. It can detect 2 fingers. It does multi-touch. You have this little button down here for scrolling, which is awesome. So let's just say I want to open a new window. Let's say I go to /.org. I can scroll. You can also scroll with the track point over here by hitting this down and doing this. Or you could just tap this middle button and use the trackpad, which I never use, but it's nice to have a middle button on both. Now, so this is pretty good. Now, the one point that's going to disappoint you is if you use Linux. If you use Linux, I'm warning you right now, the palm detection on the trackpad is complete and utter crap. You're going to want to turn this off if you use Linux. I'm telling you now, if you use Linux, don't choose trackpad or trackpoint. But if you use trackpoint, turn off trackpad because the palm detection in Windows is great. The palm detection in Linux is just... if you don't believe me, you can figure that out for yourself. Now, next up on this is the keyboard itself. Now, as you'll notice, the keyboard keys are actually slightly curved, which I really like. I've kind of gotten used to these keys, and while I don't like the layout as much as the T520 layout, what I like about these keys is that they're curved. So as I am typing, it's really easy. Let me just open up Notepad++ here, and I'm going to get to typing. And let's just put this on screen so you can see. Let's see. So I can only type with 2 fingers because I never learned how to type with 5 fingers. I will probably typo like crazy, but this is a very easy keyboard to type on, even if you can only type with your index fingers. This keyboard is just amazing. I've never had the level of accuracy with a laptop that I have had with this one. I've never had the level of seamlessness. The combination of the keys being curved, so it kind of just seems like they're hugging your fingers rather than being flat. That and the fact that this is actually the gravelly keyboard as I described in another video. So these keys have this gravelly texture to them that you can see, so that the grease doesn't get absorbed onto them as easily. Now, as many people have mentioned, and it is going to be more difficult to clean. If you want to clean these keys, you're going to need to use something like a clean room wiper. If you use a standard paper towel, it's just going to leave debris inside that gravelly stuff, and then the keyboard is going to feel like shit. So you can buy these clean room wipers. You can buy packs of 1,000 on eBay for like 15 bucks, and that's what I use to clean my keyboard. But the reason I like this more gravelly keyboard, and by the way, this only comes with this gravelly keyboard layout if you buy the non-backlit version. The backlit version does not have this. When you buy the non-backlit version and you get this keyboard layout, it's the same generally gravelly texture that you get with the rest of the machine on the Palmrest, where it just doesn't absorb the sweat and the crap and the oils from your fingers as easily as the machine with the completely flat key. I like that, and it's just another part of what makes this a luxury laptop. With other laptops, you can see and you can eventually feel the grease on the keys if you're in some situation where you're outdoors or you're not able to wash your hands for a while. Whereas with this machine, it's still going to get on there, but it's not going to get on there nearly as much, and it won't feel nearly as uncomfortable for you. And again, I like these. I have a preference for the machines with that gravelly texture. This machine has that gravelly texture throughout the palm rest and the keyboard. And if you're going to clean it, do use a clean room wiper rather than a standard paper towel, so that you don't leave behind a bunch of debris and just make your keyboard even dirtier. Cleaning the standard keyboard that doesn't have the gravelly texture can be done with just about anything, but cleaning this one is really best done with the clean room wiper. I also like the actual layout of the keys on this laptop. I don't like it as much as the old layout where the page up and page down was up here, and this home, end, and delete and backspace were all closer to where they would be on a desktop keyboard. I much preferred when this layout was closer to what it was in a desktop keyboard, but it is better than some of the disgraces that you'll see in a lot of other modern laptops. I like that at the very least we have delete and backspace as dedicated keys. Something that's always driven me nuts in a Mac is, you know, oh no, if you want delete, you have to hit FN backspace. I mean, I use delete all the time. Having that as two separate keys is, I mean, having to hit two keys to hit one when it's a key as useful and that I use as commonly as delete is incredibly aggravating. I like that I have dedicated volume keys, which you used to not be able to get in the 13-inch models. They used to have them up here, and they took them away, and they put them on the function keys. At the very least, you have dedicated volume keys located on the numpad, and this is another point that it's going to be a little bit of a rant. I don't like numpads on laptops. They don't make sense to me. On desktops, it's fine, but a laptop, if I'm going to be using this in my lap, so if I'm going to take this and I'm going to place it, so let's say I put this in my lap, I'm used to having the laptop like this. So if I have it evenly spaced between both legs. So which means that I have to use the keyboard now off center, or I have to put the laptop like this so it's not balanced properly, just so that the keyboard can be centered. And this to me is incredibly, incredibly stupid. I like to have the laptop centered on my lap, and I like to not have to lean over to the left in order to use it. It's not, you know, I don't have to lean over to the left very much, but I prefer to not lean to the left when, you know, when I don't have to. So here I have to just tilt myself over a little bit to the left in order to use the machine, because the numpad causes the keyboard, the trackpad, and the track point to be off-centered, which, again, I think is kind of ridiculous. If you find the numpad useful, that's great. You should be able to buy the version of the ThinkPad that has the numpad, whereas I should be able to buy the version of the ThinkPad that doesn't have a numpad. Again, this is one of those things where I like to criticize. I like to say, don't try to do what Apple does. Apple has one line for everybody, one this for everybody very often. Lenovo has the X series and the T series and the P series and the W series and the L series and the Yoga and the gaming one, and you have so many different machines. Yet you get on the workstation one, which is the most expensive, you can't even give me an option to get rid of the numpad. I would happily pay an extra $100 to not have this numpad here and to have the keyboard, the trackpad, and the track point moved over to the center of the laptop where they belong. Now onto the display. This is, I'm going to lower the brightness to about 50% here, and as you can see, I'm just going to get a picture on the screen. Let's get a nice picture of Nina Bodrick, which is my wallpaper, and you can see what she looks like as the machine goes from side to side here. So I have a bunch of lighting in my office right above me. There's a bunch of LED lights in those T8 tubes so that I can see everything I'm working on. And as you can see, this matte screen, this IPS matte screen, not only does it have an excellent viewing angle, you could still see Nina perfectly at this very uncomfortable angle. You can still see all this stuff very well, but also it's very good at selling the light a complete GTFO because it's a matte display. I like being able to get a matte one. And if we put the brightness all the way up, it does an even better job of selling the lighting in my office a complete GTFO. So this is a pretty nice screen. And one of the other things that you may have noticed earlier on is this actually has a color calibrator here. So this little color by Pantone thing over here, it comes with software that when you close the machine, it puts pictures on the screen, different colors, and then this reads the color that it sees, and then it calibrates the screen according to what it sees, which is a really nice feature. So even though this is not, you know, some $6,000 display, if you want to do if you want to, you know, color adjust your video or your prints in any way, and you use this for some type of semi-professional use on the go, this is going to give you an edge ahead of other laptops that you don't have this color calibration built in. I've honestly never seen this built into a laptop before, so I'm very impressed with it. I tried it out, and it is a great great feature. You may not like what everything looks like on your screen after this. I will warn you that you're probably not going to like a lot of what things look like, but you'll be able to make decisions based on reality rather than the lie of what your screen is telling you. And that is a very good thing. Now, the one complaint that I have about this screen that I did, and a lot of people don't like me for making the complaint, is that there's no 4K touchscreen. And it's not for me a gimmick. It's because I genuinely use this machine for work, and most of what I'm doing with the machine is looking at documents like this all day. And when I'm looking at documents like this, it is incredibly aggravating to look at them in 1080p. As you can see, 1080p is blinding. If I want to see the entire circuit for U7000 over here, you're going to see that looking at this in 1080p is painful. Yes, I can see that that's R7001, but you are killing your eyes to see that that's 4.7 ohms. You're killing your eyes to see whether that's, you know, 603 or 402 package size. Now, luckily, again, because of the beautiful interface on this machine, zooming in, you can zoom in with the trackpad. Admittedly, it doesn't work as nicely as it does on Apple. Apple zooming with the trackpad just shits on this. As you can see, I just did a zoom gesture and it thought I was moving the mouse up. The trackpad is not as good as what you're going to get with an Apple machine. I will give Apple that they have by far the best trackpad on any laptop. I don't use the trackpad. I use the track point. So when I zoom, I hold Control, I hold down this, and I use the track point. So I can scroll around the document left, right, up, down using the track point and holding down the middle button. And when I want to zoom in and out, I can do that by holding down Control. I zoomed out a little too much there. Yeah, I'll give it to Apple. Their trackpad just shits on this, especially for gestures. It's just, I don't think PCs are ever going to realistically catch up with that. But you can see here, I can zoom in and, well, sometimes I can. Sometimes it thinks I'm not hitting Control. Either way, this is why I like having a 4K touchscreen. I've tried a 1366 by 768 touchscreen, and it just shit on any other way of navigating the schematic. Being able to navigate the schematic like this is fucking amazing. It's beautiful, and I wish I could do that on here. But Lenovo only offers the touchscreen on the 1080p model. And again, the problem with 1080p is when you want to view the entire page on the screen for an overall picture view, it looks like crap. So I wish that Lenovo would give you the option to get a 4K touchscreen the same way that the Dell XPS 9550 has allowed people to do. Dell has proven that you can put a workstation class machine together that is somewhat durable, that has a 4K touchscreen, and I would really like to see Lenovo at least offer it as an option. I know that I'd be willing to pay an extra $600 for it, and I'm sure there are other people out there that would like to as well. It's not just a gimmick. It's not just, you know, for kids and for multimedia. It's for people that do real work. So that's my rant on that. Now for the fun part of this video, which I may or may not edit to the front depending on how I feel, the durability test. So this channel is all about repairing Apple products that have been liquid damaged, and I get lambasted a lot for saying that brands that sell much cheaper products are often more durable and liquid resistant. And a lot of people say that that's not true, that it doesn't work that way, and Apple does the best they can with it. So I just thought I would put my money where my mouth is with my own machine here. So this is running Prime 95 right now. So while it is running Prime 95, I am going to take my water bottle here, which is about this much full, and we're going to splash it all over a laptop that is plugged in and see how this goes. And I'm going to pray that either A, the laptop continues to work, or B, that a miracle occurs and this gets as many views as a techrax video so I can just buy another one. Fuck it. Fell.
Soak your chia, spread the seeds, keep it watered, and watch it grow.
All right. So screen is giving us a few glitches. You can see here that the clock says 11:29. External out is still working well. The external out appears to be working. My track point is working. I'm able to click. I'm able to move things around. Holy shit. Tell me I'm able to type. This would be fucking cool. How many keys? This is funny. You can actually see the how many key. It's actually letting me type. Still work after being doused in water. It appears that we do not have a single key malfunction on the entire machine. WTF. God damn, man. Even my caps lock LED is working. Wow. All right, so now I'm going to dry my machine up. All right, so right after I did that, I immediately poured a bunch of alcohol to follow the water and then tried to dry it off with the air compressor in the hopes that the alcohol would displace the water, and with any luck, my machine would not be totally screwed after intently pouring not just a tiny bit, but a lot of water right onto it. So hopefully the alcohol displaced it to the point where I may actually be able to use this when I go home. And let's open it up and see what this thing looks like on the inside. So above camera, here we go. You can see all the stains from my alcohol plus water. I have a bin of alcohol, so I pretty much just tossed the upper casing of the computer into the bin, not the screen, because I didn't want to screw up the screen too much. You don't want to get alcohol inside of a screen. It'll look terrible. So who knows? It may even turn on again. So let's just remove this bottom panel over here first. We're going to get to the inside. This is a bit of a pain in the ass to get off. It helps if you take off all the screws, dumbass. All right. Not a pain in the ass if you take off all the screws. So as you can see here, dry, mofo, dry. Got a nice battery that's plugged in right next to all my liquid. So here you get access to RAM slots. So you can see that this comes with 32 gigabytes of RAM in the form of 4 separate sticks. So this is the RAM slots. So this has the capability to hold quite a bit of RAM. So you got 2 RAM slots down here, and I imagine the other 2 RAM slots are going to be on the other side of the machine. Never opened this far before. So you got 2 RAM slots over here. Now you've also got some drainage holes on the bottom of the machine, usually with Lenovo. So let me see if I can find those. Right over here it says a little drip indicator. See this? So the liquid is supposed to come out of there. Let me just take off some of these screws. These are going to be the screws that hold the keyboard in. There's one here. There's one here. And there should be one more over here. Those are going to hold the keyboard in. Then we've got these screws on the side that I'm going to remove. And those look to be a separate size, so I'm going to put them off to the side on a separate magnet. Okay, there's another separately sized screw over here. Gotta love a laptop that uses a bunch of screws of different sizes. That's annoying as hell. Yeah, I'm gonna just put these in the order that I remove them, or else I'll never remember where they go. So let's... Now these drives, these are my 2 SSDs. It has 2 2.5-inch bays over here. These drives are actually not held in by screws. So these here are our 2 bays. And here's the cool part about this machine. That doubles as a 2.5-inch bay or an M2 bay. So you can put M2 drives, and they're going to plug in over here on the PCB, which you can't see because of crappy office lighting, so I'm sorry about that. But you may be able to see right over there where an M2 drive can plug in, and an M2 drive can plug in over there. And then you've also got these 2 SATA ports over here where you can plug in SATA drives. So here's a pro tip if you're buying this machine. I would actually suggest that you buy it with 2.5-inch drives. Here's why. If you ever want to put a 2.5-inch drive in later, you don't get the machine with these special little brackets and the cable here. So this is a SATA cable. On one end you have a standard serial ATA power and data connector, and on the other end you've got this little funky connector for the motherboard. You don't get these if you buy the machine with an M2 drive. So I actually bought my machine with 2 hard drives, knowing I didn't want 2 hard drives rather than M2, so that I could get these. If I want to get M2 later, I can. If I want to have an M2 drive and also have a SATA drive, I can. So it expands the possibilities for the machine if you get it with a 2.5-inch drive, since you'll have these 2 for later. If you want to buy the machine with 2 M2 drives, then ignore that, and you don't need to buy it with these little pieces. So I'm going to take off the other screws that are in here. This is for the drive bay, and I'm going to put those on yet another magnet. We've got 2 screws over here by the battery compartment. Just going to do a quick scan through to see if we've missed any. By the way, when I said that the power jack is not directly soldered onto the motherboard, you can see here that there is a connection straight from the power jack. See, the power jack over here has a wire that goes to the motherboard. So as I said, the power jack is not directly soldered to the board, so there's no direct pressure on the motherboard itself. Missed 1 screw over here. Always want to make sure you don't miss any screws. Better to be safe than sorry now. Now this keyboard is supposed to slide out, so we do this. And there's going to be a bunch of water, and then alcohol, and then mixed alcohol and water inside here, I'm sure. So you're going to do this, and then it's supposed to pop out. Pop up and out. There we go. And under it, it is soaked. Dry that off. Now there are 2 connectors here. Dry out, little computer. And then we can take the Palmrest off, I believe. Unless there's a bunch of other screws that we need to take off. Ah, we might have missed the screw over there. Or not. Doesn't look like it. Doesn't look like we've missed a screw. Okay, so we've got one little sensor looking thingy over here to unplug. Now, what the hell is keeping this on over here? Ah, here we go. These this just snaps right in and snaps right out. It's a little scary how much force you need to snap that out, though. Okay, we got the fingerprint scanner right over here. Just going to toss that up. And then there's one last cable for the color Pantone scanner, which is this thing over here. And I pulled it out over here. I must have pulled out a little too hard. It's always important to pull out too soon rather than pull out too hard. Its timing is everything, not force. So the machine has this really strong roll cage, and this is going to help it a lot if you ever manage to drop it. As you can see, the surrounds for my speakers are pretty much fucked, so I'm pretty sure that the speakers in this computer are going to sound awful from here on in, from the liquid. However, you can see that not a lot has gotten to the motherboard. And you can also see on this machine that the board is covered in this black tape. And it's also covered in here. And there are all these little drainage holes. The cool thing is that there's so many drainage holes where the water that comes through the keyboard is going to be let out of the machine. And if we look at the bottom of the keyboard, it's got its screw holes, but it's also got drainage holes in the bottom to let the water out of the machine. Let's see what it looks like under the screen over here. I'm not going to take the entire thing apart to pieces because I do want to get home at a somewhat reasonable hour tonight. I know. Boo. But hey, would like to go to sleep. So we're going to take this off. This is what my screen assembly looks like, which I'm going to clean with some Windex. Got the Wi-Fi antennas up there. And these are some really strong hinges down here. What Lenovo is known for. I might as well tighten them a little while I'm here, since I abused the hell out of this laptop. These are some quality hinges. Let me show you what a good grommet looks like. Okay, we take off that one. Take off this one over here. It's crazy. Even after unscrewing the hinges, the laptop is still actually attached to the hinges. Like, I can move this back and forth. I mean, just the build quality on this is absolutely insane. Just the amount of fail-safe, the amount of thought and effort that went into this being a strong, durable machine. As you can see, from the roll cage to just the way the hinges are structured to the material that was used. You'd have to feel this material to feel that these are not the cheap, crappy junk plastic you see in the low-end HPs and Toshibas. And this is all really high quality stuff. So that is about that. This is a pretty amazing machine, and there is no corrosion on the board at all that's visible. All the important stuff is completely covered, and there is so much in terms of a drainage system to keep the important parts from getting ruined by liquid that I just have not seen on any other brand laptops that many would be smart to emulate. I just took off the screen connector just to feel around, and that's the part that is most often corroded on Apple computers. You see, I use LCD connectors by 100 load every week, and this thing over here is just, it looks perfect. It looks like it doesn't even feel like it's ever gotten liquid on it. The speaker got a little, but everything else is just covered and great. So that's it for the overview of the Lenovo P50. If you have any suggestions, remarks, what I should do for the next review, how I could have done this one better, what else you want to know, leave them in the comments, and I will try to accommodate you. So thank you as always, and I hope you learned something.